Rest of the program over to Dick Tardif, who will introduce the speakers. Thank you.
Good morning. It is indeed Fellowship Sunday, when folks in the fellowship share their thoughts about the theme for the month, which is Widening the Circle. This morning we have Miso Lee will be up first on Zoom. Maggie Pinson, Dave Delmendorf will follow that, and we have a last-minute addition, AJ Price, if we have time, and I believe we will. So I will turn it over to them. Miso, you're up.
Could you hear me okay? Okay. Thank Dick for introduction, and I like to share a personal experience with you all. And 8 years ago, I joined UTMB as a data analyst, and my project was to use UTMB patient data to identify health disparities. And ideally, I just need to get data and then from IT and conduct data analysis. However, I kept having trouble to communicate with IT. And for example, I need age, gender, health outcome diagnosis. And I think these are very straightforward. And I don't know that actually for IT people, they only see the codes, different names, 1010, something like that. And then I asked them like, how about you tell me what you have in your system? And then I use the variables you have for my research. And they told me they don't have a list of variables because it's just a very large system. And it's kind of like you go to a restaurant, there is no menu, and you told the waitress like you want a seafood. And a few minutes later, the waitress brought you something looks like a chicken, and you ask the waitress what's that, and the waitress told you it's a seagull because they treat seagull as a seafood. And so it's just very inconvenient, like there is always miscommunication between the IT and me. So to better understand their language, I decided to go to the training for them and then find out what they have. And so long story short, I think widening the circle has a lot of benefits. And at least right now, when I say seafood, I can tell them it's a fish or shrimp, and rather than they brought me something that's not what I want. And also from this experience and many other experiences, I have 3 lessons learned. First, we need a motivation or purpose to widen the circle. And I'm sure you all have your reason or your purpose, and that's why you sit here. And second, make the move. Just like handshaking, like when 2 people shake hands, at least one person has to be the one to extend your hand so that another person is also coming to you, then make connections with each other. And finally, be okay to be questioned. Because when I was sitting in the classroom and trying to understand the system, the trainer asked me why a researcher is here. And I told them because I'm researching your system, and that's why I'm here. But after you tell them why you are here, and then they know you are so brave to come out of your comfort zone and try to understand them, and they are always happy to help you. And that's what I want to share with you today. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Maggie. If I forget to talk into the mic, wave or something. I appreciate being able to be here and share my thoughts about taking baby steps towards widening my own circle. I'm a product of white privilege, and I don't say that as a criticism, but just as a fact. I grew up in a middle-class white family, both parents college educated. They had liberal political and social leanings. They taught me it's wrong to treat people differently or unfairly based on their differences, such as color of skin, and they modeled those values. I grew up in the 60s when race relations in this country exploded and produced the civil rights movement. But I myself had no experience of racial discrimination. My parents believed in public schooling and wanted me in the best public schools available, which meant we lived in white neighborhoods. In elementary school, I had no Black or even Latino classmates. The closest thing was a boy from Cuba, a boy who had emigrated from Cuba. Despite my parents' support of the concept of desegregation, we moved to Southern California the summer before the Berkeley schools integrated for the first time. It wasn't the only reason for the move, but it was a significant one. My parents had seen the violence that could occur and despite their convictions, did not want me to experience that. So really, long before I recognized that my social media choices limited me, I was living in a bubble. I was a good person, but I was living in a bubble. My first experience of reverse discrimination happened when I was a graduating college senior, so really already a young adult. I wanted to use my Spanish language skills in education to become a bilingual education teacher. But I failed the battery of tests for admission, not because of my academic preparation or fluency in Spanish, but because I was both racially and culturally white. My teaching mentor did have that decision reversed, and I had the opportunity to go forward, but I decided not to. That I was angry and I was hurt and was not prepared to face that kind of resistance. So I didn't. I took a different path. It was the first time that I had really experienced a significant obstacle in my life. And when I think back on it, of course, at the time, I didn't have the distance to think about why I was treated that way or where that might be coming from. But thinking back on it, I experienced that reverse discrimination for maybe 5 months, right? What if I had grown up as a person of color? What if from birth I had experienced that in every aspect of my life, not just academic, but in every aspect? How long before I would have given up all of my dreams? Funny story here from my life. My sister was a professional jazz singer. She looked a lot like me, a little taller, maybe a little slimmer, but she had the same hairstyle and everything, so I was mistaken for her quite often. Early on, she was really strongly influenced by Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald, two famous Black jazz singers. Somewhere in the late 80s or 90s, she was invited to a family reunion, the McCorkle family reunion. That's my maiden name. My dad's family emigrated from Scotland. So she goes to this family reunion to perform, right? And when she arrives, she discovers that this branch of the McCorkle family is all Black. So imagine the surprise of both the inviters and her own to realize that, they expected her to be Black. She expected them to be white. She never really went into details of how the rest of that went. I'm sure it went fine, but that's a wake-up call. Now, at the time, that was a funny story she shared, and I thought, wow, that's, weird. But thinking back on it, wow, what does that mean about my family? They had slaves. Clearly, they had slaves, some branch, somewhere back there. So I am a product of white privilege. But I didn't begin to connect the dots and think of it that way until after May 2020, when George Floyd was arrested for possibly passing a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes and ended up paying for it with his life at the hands of an arresting officer and 2 subordinates looking on. Actually, it was the video of George Floyd's death taken by a bystander and posted on social media that was impossible not to see. Other awful, high-profile deaths of apparently innocent black men and women had come before. Trayvon Martin, Botham Jean, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and many more came first. But witnessing George Floyd's death on social media, over and over, I might add, made it impossible to ignore that despite the civil rights movement of the 50s and 60s, race relations in this country are not that different 60 years later. Not nearly different enough. So how can I, as an individual, address systemic racism in a meaningful way? Well, I can confront my own biases and preconceptions. I have them. I can see them. I can investigate them. I can replace them. I can read books and articles written by Black or Asian or LGBTQIA authors, writing from their own perspectives to broaden my understanding. I can build relationships, one conversation at a time, with people that are different than I am by focusing on what we have in common. I can contribute to organizations that are fighting social, political, and healthcare inequality. I can use my power as a consumer to boycott businesses that contribute to discriminatory practices. I can vote my heart and conscience, then vote again and again and again. And if necessary, I can take to the streets. And you know, when the old women take to the streets, they mean business. Thank you for your time.
Judy, can you hear me?
I think you have to smell right at that mic.
Oh, okay. Thought I was loud enough. Judy, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. First picture, please. Hi, I'm Dave Delmenhorst, and I've been a member of this congregation for a little while. Well, sideways, but that's okay. I am an unrepentant hippie, a self-proclaimed libtard, and a recovering Catholic. But mostly I'm a semi-nomadic pilgrim these days. I travel in a 21-foot van outfitted by Winnebago. Judy, next slide. Accompanied by my ever faithful companion, Augie. We recently returned from a trip to the Texas-Mexico border along the Rio Grande. Here are a few of my observations, opinions, and rants. Laredo, Texas. I first noticed the militarization of the border at Laredo, where I visited a local museum. Walking back to Ruby, I talked to a group of soldiers that were billeted next to the river. They said they were regular Army, which surprised me. They were personable, polite, and seemed more interested in scoring some weekend passes than guarding anything. ICE, Border Patrol, Homeland Security were all there, sandwiched between these soldiers and the bridge. But why regular Army? Were they expecting an immigrant uprising, a mad rush across the bridge? Armies along borders cause trouble. Duh, Russia and the Ukraine, Hitler in Poland, Zachary Taylor in Mexico. The U.S. invaded Mexico in 1846, stopped when they reached Mexico City, the halls of Montezuma. Mexico ceded 55% of their territory to the U.S. The Rio Grande was established as our southern border. Do I really think we're going to go to war with Mexico? Not during this current administration, but if we elect another rogue president, all bets are off. We certainly are at war with the immigrants. The right has gone totally Vladimir Putin. They sparked a class war since the present policy of denying poor people of color health care, fair housing, voting rights, a living wage isn't working fast enough. They're ramping up their populist hate speech, mobilizing their fascist goons, and marching to the border. Immigrants now are the easiest target. But make no mistake, they've not forgotten the African Americans, the indigenous people, the LGBTQ plus community, non-evangelical Christians, Muslims, Jews, and Democrats. Reeks of Germany in the 30s. Judy? Next picture, please. Judy? There. In Mission, Texas, I stayed at an RV park, sandwiched between the wall. Judy?
Yes.
Next picture, please. Between the wall and the river. And another picture, please, Judy. Every morning, the Border Patrol launched several border boats, patrol boats. Between the helicopters, the drones, the ground sensors in the area, it kind of felt like apocalypse now. No smell of napalm in the morning yet. Next picture, please. But there was hope and some powerful allies. La Lomita Chapel is a historic adobe church along the Rio Grande. Bishop Daniel Flores of the Brownsville Diocese and Father Rodney Snipes, known as the Cowboy Bishop, or Cowboy Priest, fought the efforts of the border protection to seize their land to build the wall. Judy? Thank you. The National Butterfly Center fought and won their lawsuit to block the wall across their sanctuary, but they've since been temporarily closed due to threats against their staff. Judy? Lupe, La Unión del Pueblo Entero, founded by Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, provides grassroots organizations and immigrant communities. They also provide health care and immigration law counseling. Brownsville, Texas. I drove into Brownsville to visit Old Market Square, and I parked in a lot near a grassy area where I met a gentleman using a bucket of water and some rags to wash cars. We talked for a while. He explained that the economy was bad, and this was his way to make a few extra bucks. He didn't need much, just a little food for his dog and his puppy. The weather was warming, so I brought him a couple of bottles of water and a little dog food. I wanted to offer him some money, but I really thought he wanted to make it on his own, so I didn't want to offend him. I asked him if he would accept a few dollars to watch my van, because watching cars is a fairly common job along the border in Mexico. When I returned, I brought him one of Augie's old toys. The pup jumped up and raced around the lot with his prize. We both broke out laughing. As I left, he grasped my hand and told me I would always have a friend in Brownsville. Was he legal? Don't know. Really don't give a damn. He was a human, a fellow dog lover, and he deserved respect. Judy, next slide. I wandered along the closed shops and failing family restaurants of downtown. In the main plaza, the old market was shuttered and somebody was sleeping in every doorway. Many people on the streets were dressed for travel, long pants, tennis shoes or boots, hoodies, always with the hood up. Masks even on the street, masks when nobody were around. I'm sure some had recently crossed. Some had a startled, almost hopeless look. What stories lay behind those desperate eyes? What circumstances drove these people to leave their homes, to leave the lives that they loved, to leave the lives that they had always known? Could they no longer feed their family? Were they victims of criminal or political violence? What crimes and indignities had they suffered crossing? Were they robbed or raped or held for ransom? Immigrant women are often raped by their coyotes or sold into sexual slavery. U.S. immigration officials are complicit in these crimes. The women are told you have to pay with your body. Before crossing, they stock up on morning after bills. Often these crimes go unreported. You're a hell of a long way from the Me Too movement on the border. Would these people die in the sweltering trailers abandoned on the side of the road or in the desert trying to avoid the immigration checkpoints? Would their bones be left to bleach in the sun, or would they be found buried in a pauper's grave? Would their families ever know their fate? Immigration checkpoints are usually 50 to 60 miles past the border. Immigrants are dropped off before the checkpoints and have to make their way past these checkpoints in the desert. Some don't make it. Many don't make it. The South Texas Human Rights Center in Falfurrias builds these water stations, the 55-gallon drums stocked with 1-gallon jugs of water. They replace them on a regular basis. They are often stolen or burned by people in the area. They also recover immigrants if they're found alive, or exhume the bodies and do DNA analysis and try and reunite the bodies with their families. The independent film Missing in Brooks County tells you a lot about what's happening on the border. If they survive the checkpoints, are they going to be greeted by the xenophobic public or vilified by ruthless politicians? If they manage to make a major city like Houston, they might reside at the Casa Juan Diego, a house of hospitality run by Catholic workers. It services immigrants. And God bless you, Don McCarty, who volunteers there and stays with the immigrants 4 days a week. Who are these immigrants that insist on coming here? The ones I know are someone's daughter, or son, or mom, or dad. They are parents who love their children so much that they'll risk anything to cross. They are men who willingly leave their families and friends knowing that they may never return. They are people who do their jobs, the jobs that no one else will do, just so they can send a few dollars home. They are the DACA students from my class who graduated from Harvard. They are people I love and who enrich my life. They are me if I hadn't won the birth lottery and was born on this side. But most importantly, they are human beings and should be treated as such. Oración por los inmigrantes, a prayer for immigrants. May your time of privation be over. May you find acceptance, friendship, allies, and advocates. May your children and their children be healthy and prosper. May you accept the best that we have to offer and offer your best in return. May you find the peace that you so desperately need. Amen.